What comes to mind when you hear the word Czechia?
Prague's nightscape, delicious beer, Charles Bridge.
There must be a lot that comes to mind, but one of them might be music, right? As you may know, Czechia has produced many world-class composers, singers, and orchestras.
So today, we are going to talk a little about Czech music and art.
And the Czech musician we will be focusing on today is none other than Smetana.
Bedřich Smetana is a composer and musician who represents Czech national music and is regarded in his homeland as the father of Czech music. He even described himself as a creator of purely Czech music. And 2024 marked the 200th anniversary of Smetana's birth and the 140th anniversary of his death. So why is We're Diplomats discussing Smetana? The Czech Center Seoul is holding an exhibition on Smetana and they invited us to the exhibition. I think it would be a good opportunity to learn a little more about Czech music and art.
So this week, We're Diplomats will be taking a music and art trip to Czechia. So, shall we begin?
So today, I will be visiting the Czech Center Seoul. And I have finally arrived.
So everyone, I'm now at the Czech Center Seoul.
The Czech Center Seoul, located in Jongno, was established in 2013. The center in Korea is the fifth Czech center that was established in a non-European country. It hosts a variety of cultural events, including exhibitions, film screenings, theater and dance performances, and lectures. It is making great efforts to bring Korea and Czechia closer culturally. So let me ring the bell now.
Hi, welcome.
Hi!
The
person coming out to greet us is...
How are you?
Good.
Could you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure.
Maybe to this camera.
Sure. My name is Michal Emanovský. I'm the director of Czech Center Seoul starting from the year 2022.
Michal Emanovský, the director of the Czech Center Seoul, is also a great hornist. He served as the assistant principal horn of the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra from 2006 to 2021. He has been living in Korea for quite some time, so he is familiar with both Korean and Czech cultures.
Our Czech Center is pretty much just offices. It is not really used for public. We don't have exhibition space or anything of that sort. That's why we use our fans as a place to connect to Korean people.
That is right. As the director just mentioned, the exhibition we are looking at today is a little different from other exhibitions. As you can see here, the exhibition pieces are on display on the Cultural Center fence. Even if there is no proper exhibition space inside the center, Czech culture can be introduced by utilizing outdoor spaces like this. Isn't the fence exhibition a really great idea? And now, let's take a look around the exhibition.
So first, could you
Yeah.
tell me the theme of the exhibition?
Sure. So every year we put about 4 or 5 exhibitions on our fence. We try to change the
really?
themes.
Oh.
And this time we selected the work of Veronika Vilkova, who made a marvelous book about Bedřich Smetana. So this particular exhibition is related to the year of Czech music, as well as the anniversary of Bedřich Smetana, the 200-year anniversary of his birth.
Veronika Vilkova is a prominent Czech painter, illustrator, and writer. She has written an illustrated book titled Bedřich Smetana. The illustrations in this book are on display outside the Czech Center on their fence. In particular, 2024 was the 200th anniversary of Smetana's birth and also the year of Czech music. Since 1924, marking the 100th anniversary of Smetana's birth, each year ending with the number 4 has been celebrated as the year of Czech music in Czechia.
So first, could you introduce a little bit about the artist? Why did you choose her?
Sure. So, first of all, when I looked into her, I realized we've already worked together on a different project 3 years ago. It was called Czech Heroines, Czech Female Heroes. And she was one of the student artists participating in that project. And since then, she made the book about Smetana, which received the Golden Ribbon Award. And actually, I saw her first book about Beethoven. And I felt that her painting style really popped from the pages. And I really liked her style. And when it was introduced to us at the headquarters of the Czech Centers, I thought it was a really great opportunity to conclude our year of Czech music with her exhibition.
And there was another special aspect about this exhibition. He asked me to scan the QR code printed on the panel. I scanned it.
Oh,
So
wow.
you can see the entire playlist. So every panel has a different music selection.
It took me to a playlist full of Smetana's music. So you can see it as an exhibition that satisfies both your eyes and ears.
So I've seen some people stop by, actually scan the QR codes, which makes me very happy.
So shall we find out more about Smetana before moving on?
Bedřich Smetana, who lived from 1824 to 1884, is the father of Czech musical nationalism and a composer who introduced Czech classical music to the world. One of his best-known works is My Homeland, composed between 1874 and 1879. The piece is a cycle of 6 symphonic poems, full of national pride, depicting Czech history, landscapes, and legends. At the time Smetana composed My Homeland, he was 50 years old and had completely lost his hearing. Without the ability to hear, he relied entirely on his inner voice to express his love for his homeland. Through this piece, he depicted the flow of the Moldau River that flows through Czechia, the beauty of Bohemian nature, and the majestic castles of Prague through music. Smetana, a pioneer of Czech opera, premiered his first opera, The Brandenburgers in Bohemia, in Prague in 1866. The Bartered Bride, which also opened in Prague the same year, is a significant contribution to Czech music with its Czech folk dance and lively melodies, and remains one of the most famous Czech operas to this day.
Then let us enjoy the exhibition by focusing on the illustrations with the director. If you see here, the illustrations on display are deeply related to Smetana's life.
each represents different part of his life or different composition that he wrote that are very important. So in this first panel, we see Smetana as a pianist. So before he was known as a composer, he was known as a pianist. So Smetana was influenced by Liszt, a famous pianist, a lot. He admired his compositions, so this is one of his piano cycles. So now this is probably one of his most famous works in the Czech Republic, in Czechia, Barter Bride. It's a comic opera full of folk motifs. It's very funny. Now, Litomyšl is the city where he was born. He was the son of a beer brewmaster. And in Litomyšl, which still pretty much looks like on this painting to this day, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Every year is the festival Smetanova Litomyšl. It's a huge festival where you not only hear Smetana's music, but other composers as well. It's a really beautiful city to visit, and the festival makes it very special.
This is first time I've heard of Litomyšl.
Right, it's not close to Prague. You know, when Korean visitors come to the Czech Republic, they tend to visit Prague and Český Krumlov. Those are probably the two most common towns to visit, or cities. But Litomyšl is quite beautiful on the way to Moravia. Finally, there's a few panels based on Má vlast. That's the most famous cycle of Smetana's compositions. It's 6 independent pieces. From those, Moldau is the most well-known, Vltava, about the river. But this is another one called From Bohemia's Woods and Fields. Then finally, around the corner. This is probably the piece that everybody knows. If they know Smetana, they know Moldau, Vltava. Yeah, so it's about a 15-minute piece about a river's journey through the Czech landscape.
The Moldau is the name of the river that flows into Prague. In Czechia, it is called Vltava. When I listen to the music, it reminds me of a powerful flowing stream. I noticed that she didn't use that many colors, but the painting still gives a very powerful feeling.
Yeah, I think the technique, you know, the way she applies the paint gives this the plasticity, and it really draws you in.
Right. I felt a calm yet powerful emotion from looking at the illustrations. Actually, these are not real paintings. They are developed photographs. Yet I could see the way she used brush strokes and the texture of the painting as if I was looking at a real painting. Looking at the illustrations and listening to the music, I felt like I was having a conversation with Smetana. I think it is a brilliant idea that you turned this fence into like an exhibition space, right?
Right,
So
right.
how are the reactions from people?
Yeah, we have had so many different reactions, and it opens kind of a door to us. We don't really open our real door, unfortunately we can't, but it gives a chance for people that live here as well as visitors to see a little bit what we are about, which is, yeah, we are happy about that.
Do you have any plans to invite her to Korea?
I would love to. Yeah. We always have to select each year projects that we decide on together with the headquarters, and hopefully she can come.
It may not be possible to meet Veronika Vilkova in person, but there are plenty of ways to talk to her. I was able to talk to her in Czechia via video call. It would be great if you could come and see the exhibition.
Yes.
Before we begin our interview, let me briefly introduce who she is. She is said to have been interested in music since she was young, playing the piano and cello. From there, her interest in musicians began, and she created a book on Beethoven in 2020 and one on Smetana in 2022. So how was it when you hear that your work was being introduced in Korea?
I was really honored because I think it looks great, and I saw the pictures and I think it looks great. The print is okay. I'm always worried about the printing of this illustration, if it will be in high quality, and I think it looks great.
So what made you decide to paint about musicians?
There's great connection between music and painting. You can find many similarities between maybe melodies, harmony, rhythm, dynamic of the music, and also the colors and space and perspective and light maybe. So I like to find these similarities and be inspired by music to create paintings and illustrations.
So I also saw your paintings, and I found that it was interesting that you didn't use that many colors, but I still got a very strong feelings from your paintings. So was there any special painting technique that you paid attention to?
You're right. These illustrations are in color spectrum more calm because I felt this way about Smetana and his music. You know, he wasn't too dynamic, maybe, or expressive. So I wanted to choose colors which are going to fit to his compositions. I'm using a palette knife painting technique. It's not very often in illustration, in book illustration, because illustrations are often about details, you know, but I'm using this palette knife, and it's amazing because it makes you able to put on the paper a lot of paint, a lot of colors, many layers of the paint. So the painting can be very dynamic, but also it has this sharp edge. Then you can paint in very subtle way and details. So then in illustration, you can have this contrast between expressive areas and very detailed areas. So this contrast, I think it's very important in music and also in illustration and painting in general.
So how do you think of Smetana as an artist, a musician?
He was very progressive. He was very intelligent and very talented and hardworking a lot. For me, he was very inspiring because he didn't look at life in black and white spectrum. He was trying to see in every person something good and something bad, and he knew that it's up to us which part of ourselves we will decide to use in relationships with people. And he had really difficult life, but he was hardworking. He didn't give up, and he was honest with his music and with himself and with his opinions, even though he didn't have any support in that time. So it is really interesting for me and very, very inspiring for me and my work as well.
She told me that she was so inspired by Smetana's life that she created a book about him. I wondered what Smetana meant to Czechs. So I decided to continue the talk on Smetana with the director of Czech Center Seoul.
So Smetana is a world-renowned composer, and he is also well-known in Korea as well. So how influential is he to the Czech music?
So he's not just influential to the music, but to the nation, I would say. He was one of the people that were instrumental in bringing the Czech identity back. We were under the Austro-Habsburg monarchy. So in the 1800s, for the first time, the country tried to bring its identity back. And it was not just musicians, obviously, it was writers, historians, but he was the first one, like the father of Czech music, that actively wanted to bring it back and establish what we were lacking until that moment. He really actively thought, okay, these operas and these pieces have to reflect the Czech nation, our identity. And he did so very well on the European scale. As a musician, he's not just special for Czech people, but to Europe as well and worldwide. His use of painting with music, representing legends, representing Vltava, the river, are really special.
So you're also a musician, and you also served as the assistant principals of the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra. So from a musician's perspective, how genius is Smetana?
We got to play the entire cycle with a Czech conductor many years ago. It was my very first time playing it, and I realized there's some pieces that we play a lot, like Moldau, and the other ones might not be as well known, but they are all genius. And the fact that he was able to compose them without actually hearing makes it that much more special. Personally, I also love playing Šárka, another movement from the same cycle. It's a legend full of energy. It's about the fights, actual wars between men and women, which is kind of interesting in this time. And I love the stories, and he's able to bring the story to life so well. So I think that's where the genius is. But also his operas, he was instrumental in establishing the opera in our country as a Czech opera. Until then, we were listening mostly to Italian, German operas, but he was one of the front runners of that.
co ty tak zarmotila, co se stalo?
It's a personal tragedy for the composer itself. He can no longer start hearing what he's composing. But in some ways, it gives you this unusual freedom of writing something you don't actually hear, but you only imagine. I think that was the case of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, where when it first came out, people were so shocked, but it was in his mind. And most of this cycle I mentioned was already composed after he lost his hearing. So even though it was a personal tragedy, the work was amazing.
So what kind of influence did his music have on Czech people at the time?
Be it his operas and other pieces, it really made us proud that we are Czech people once again. Of course, Dvořák came along and other composers, including Janáček, Suk, etc. But that's why he's called father of Czech music, because he was the one that really made it possible.
Smetana joined the independence movement when his country was dreaming of independence from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He stood at the forefront of the Czech national movement and instilled pride in the people with music that contained Czech national sentiment. I found Smetana's story relatable. Maybe it was because I found similarities between Czech history and Korean history. By finding and emphasizing with the similarities between our two countries through music, I felt the distance between me and Czechia narrowing a little. So how do you think the culture can narrow the relationship between Korea and Czechia?
So right now, you have probably seen in the news, there's a large exchange because of the nuclear power plant completion deal. And that's yet another step that brings us closer economically. But it is the culture and the art that makes us understand each other. I think that's very important. So for me, learning about Korea, maybe through pansori, through books, and I think it's the same for Korean people. See what is important to us culturally will help you understand who we are as people. And I think if the economic interests are so closely intertwined, it is important to understand each other on the human level. And art is the way to do that.
Today, I was able to get a little closer to Czechia through Smetana's music and Veronika Vilkova's illustrations. I will continue to get closer to Czechia through the charming points I didn't know about. So if you have time, how about listening to Smetana's music today? If you focus on the Czechness contained in his music, you might feel as if you were in Czechia. And that is a wrap for this week's We're Diplomats.
Then this particular painting, I asked specifically Ms. Vilkova to include because it had my instrument on it, horn, and I really liked the way the brass instruments shine. And it's from an opera called Dalibor, another opera based on a Czech legend.